I forgot to hit record. So thank you.
Yeah. So staffing issues, this is hiring and retention, keeping folks in the organization, right? Culture issues, this is toxicity on staff, the breakdown of trust between colleagues, microaggressions, or a second-class experience for a group of folks. And then thirdly, we have coverage issues. So these are stories that have a white male lens and worldview. These could include images that reinforce harmful stereotypes, or just coverage that isn't being centering authentic voices from their communities. So in product thinking, we often ask the question, what's the problem we're trying to solve? And for us, it's not just about source tracking and getting more diverse and figuring out, more diverse sources or better diverse sources. It's also about where this sits in your larger diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging strategy. So start with the big picture. We encourage folks to do a little goal setting, and think about how can you get to the destination that you're ultimately trying to reach in terms of your transformation. And again, that may be different based on which of the earlier challenges you're facing. So after you've done kind of the big brainstorm, we call it kind of flare and focus, you're going to take a matrix like this, a 2x2 matrix, and map tasks that are both urgent and important. And what this does, it allows you to take a really big, long list of great ideas and put them into 4 buckets so that you can do some of them immediately, plan to do the things that are important but not urgent. If something is urgent but not super pressing and important, delegate it. Find someone else to do it for you or with you. Find co-collaborators and co-conspirators. And finally, if it's not urgent and it's not important, don't do it right now, right? Set it to one side, put it in the parking lot, put it in the backlog, and you can always come back to that. So now we want to dive in a little bit about some of the challenges you might face with source tracking, because change never comes easily to news organizations. We know this. Some of the big things that we think that you will face with not only DEIB initiatives, but source tracking kind of writ large is buy-in among staff, especially at the leadership level. Time is one of our most precious resources as journalists. And finally, follow through. I think many of us have seen diversity initiatives in fits and starts across the last 3 years. We've seen a lot of energy go into these programs, and then they ultimately kind of fizzle out because they don't have an owner, no one's being held accountable, and things like that. Okay, so in the playbook, we break down kind of these big challenges and try to help folks think through how to break those challenges down so they can do their source tracking and transform their news organizations. So if buy-in among staff is a big concern for you, start by listing those folks. Who are your naysayers? Who is a blocker to change? And try to empathize with this person, right? You don't have to fully understand where they're coming from, but think through what motivates their resistance to change. What could you do to make this person more accessible to the change, or make the change more accessible to them? So you've got your list of folks who are definitely not going to be on board with you. Then you want to map out your stakeholders and allies. Sorry. And so these are going to be questions like, who holds power versus who holds influence? Whose voice isn't being heard at the table currently? Who's going to do the work that makes up the solution? Who participates but isn't necessarily a formal leader? And so again, if someone is high influence versus low influence, and if they're highly interested or not interested in the project that you're working on. So folks who are high influencers but low interest, just keep them satisfied. Make sure they know what you're doing, make sure you know what they're doing, and so on. Folks who have, again, low influence and low interest, so those are probably your naysayers. Don't worry about them too much. Like, keep an eye on them, make sure they're not starting, like an uprising of some sort, to counter your great efforts. But ultimately, that's not like a huge concern for you. Where you really want to put your effort is on the folks who have high influence and high interest, and high interest but low influence. So those folks you want to keep informed, but also manage closely. And so these maps can be used, these 2x2 matrices tools can be used to help prioritize folks and sort them.
And as we're going through these are all part of in more depth can be found in the Source Diversity Tracking Playbook, and you're able to go through and find out where you are, because you might not be at this stage yet, but one of the other steps might be there. So it's there and available.
So then you kind of assemble, your the way I describe it is like your mid-90s street team for cool bands, handing out CDs outside the club. That's what you want. You want your street team to be assembled. So these are folks who will help you spread the word. They're going to seed the ideas with their teammates. So these are folks who have similar goals to you, influence among their peers, and has demonstrated enthusiasm for innovation or change in some way. It can be hard to find these folks, but they're really important. So I think keep an eye out for them, engage with them, and bring them along with you. Next we have time. And as we mentioned, time is one of our most precious resources. And so when you're bringing change to an organization, make it easy, make it simple, right? Make it fast if you can. Allow people to do less of something in order to do the new task that you're introducing, like just tracking their sources. And build habits. Like habituation is it's a thing that you can learn, it's a thing you can do. So if you stack your habits, such as like when I used to teach people how to use Twitter, I would remind them, like, every time you fill your coffee cup, check your Twitter account, right? And this was 2009, so there wasn't a lot going on Twitter at the time. So this made quite a bit more sense to introduce the idea of like a couple times a day, just check it out. And the same thing is true, can be done for source tracking or any of these examples. So when I make my coffee, I'm going to meditate. When I take off my work shoes, I'll immediately change my workout clothes. When I sit down to dinner, I'll immediately say something I'm grateful for. So one creates the other. Okay, continuous follow through. This is another big one. And so you have built trust with your team. You've built out a great plan. You're going to set some goals. How you hold folks accountable is really important throughout this process, right? So who's going to pick up the work next year? Is it going to be a rotation of who's leading the tool or who's leading this committee? Are people meeting their goals, right? What does success look like? If you haven't defined success together as a team, it's going to be much harder to wrangle folks and keep them on mission. And finally, host a retrospective, right, with your team to make sure it's working. And if it's not working, think about how you can iterate on the process and pivot towards something different. So in the tool, we talk through how to have a successful retrospective, which is a meeting where folks just kind of go through and say, like, what worked and what didn't work. And we give examples for that as well.
And when you're going through these, and you're thinking about, the time allocation, what's blocking otherwise. And oftentimes, you will come across individuals in the newsroom who will not want to have anything to do with this and will throw up barriers and otherwise. And it's, very, very, just like what we see with sea lioning online, it's, very much a similar kind of activity that happens in resistance to, quantification of sources, and that it's that they're beyond reproach. And that's an extraordinarily extraordinarily effective method for taking up your time. And so when you're, starting off, have small retros, with each stage, so that then you can, see, oh, hey, this person who is opposed to it is taking up like hours and hours of time. Well, let's figure out a way to, like, move around that and circumvent that barrier, as opposed to just allowing the momentum of the project to be, to be brought to a halt, because there's one person dragging their feet. And in previous newsrooms where I instigated a source diversity tracking system, there were those people that were recalcitrant, and they didn't want to have anything to do with it. And it took individual discussions and conversations with them to bring them along. But that, I treated that as a separate project than the greater newsroom, because the greater newsroom was moving along and at that pace, and was with it. And so, the other folks, you can't let one person block your way, or a small group block your way. Sometimes you just have to ignore them and keep going. And and you can, help determine how much, that how you're going to deal with that through these small retrospectives. And so now we're passing the questions on to you, because there's so many options for this. There's every newsroom is going to have its own particular issues with this, with unique challenges, unique opportunities. And so happy to answer questions about the playbook. Going to chat about in depth, like, if you're running into issues or otherwise, let's dive in. So ask your questions, and we'll unpause or unmute and otherwise, and we'll go from there.
And if you have questions, let us know who you are. Like, do you work in a newsroom? Do you work with students? Do you work in local? Like, give us some context of what's going on out there.
Absolutely. And I've got the source diversity tracking playbook up now. And when we put this together, it was really important that it was a nonlinear solution, that you could, because not everybody's coming to it the same place. So you've got these different challenges, but they're in no particular order. So Samantha has a question. So Samantha, you are unmuted and good to go.
Great. Hi, I'm Samantha Sunny. I'm a freelancer. So I heard that RJI, the chat is still disabled, by the way. So I wasn't sure if we were supposed to post in the chat or verbally, but I heard that RJI developed like a ready to go tool or something for a source diversity tracker. I was wondering what that looks like. Like, is it ready for people to just sort of plug into their CMS or something? Or is it more like a process they have to sign up for? And like, how hard is it to use and everything?
Absolutely. So we worked with Chalkbeat to create a source diversity tracking tool. And it's literally, it's up and running, and we have sessions for providing everyone the access to it. And so that is up and running, ready to go. I will drop a link there for you to sign up. You can be independent newsrooms or otherwise. It's not designed right now to be specifically integrated with a particular CMS. It's kind of off to the side of it, but the data created could be brought in, and the free tool to sign up is literally in you can follow the link in the playbook, and it brings you to the Google form that then you can sign up. And then once you sign up, we'll give you a little tech demo. It's really easy. If you know how to fill out a form online, you know how to do this. And then on the back end, it allows you to track for your newsroom. Look at how, how you're, look at the statistics, because if we're collecting data, we have to be able to quantify it and look at it and analyze it. And so it produces data in CSV or otherwise formats, and then you can do your proper analysis on it. Jacob put a question. Emma's going to answer the question, so I'm going to hand it off to Emma.
Hi, Jacob. When we started this, it was really, our goal was to support organizations who were ready to start using the tool and help folks who weren't ready get ready. Does everyone in the world need to do source tracking? Probably not, but like most organizations aren't there yet when it comes to elevating diverse sources, when it comes to relying on sources that aren't just like white male professors at Harvard or a certain political person who answers the phone really readily, right? And not only that, it's that, are we talking to Black business owners about inflation? Are we talking to Latina dentists about like children's teeth crisis, right? Are we going beyond identity-based questions when we're talking to people from these different groups? So people are totally welcome to try this. I think some place the size of the Times, I would say start small. Pick a team, pilot it, see how it works for a month or 6 months, and then bring those results to the rest of the organization and say, hey, we tried this, we think it would work. And happy to follow up if you would like to chat more about that. Sarah dropped another resource that I'll put in the chat. This is a guide to tracking source diversity from the Open Notebook. Thank you, Sarah. Awesome. Other questions we can answer? What I like about the tool that they built is that it's based on research. So Caroline did a bunch of research with RJI about how to build inclusive language into the survey, and how short or how long to make the surveys for tracking sources, and is a survey the best method? And so the tool wasn't just a rando like, we think this will work. It was based on a lot of research, a lot of testing, a lot of experimentation, and really, hoping to pull together lowest common denominator. Makes it sound really bad, but an accessible option for any kind of newsroom, public radio station, the New York Times, a small TV station somewhere in rural, county somewhere. So I think, read the literature that Will just dropped in. This is a really good look at the research that was done, how they did the research methodology, and what they pulled together. So would definitely recommend taking a peek at that.
And as far as this goes, the hard part is getting people on board. It's the cultural change that's needed within changing up a workflow. I mean, and everyone knows that every journalist is being pulled 18 ways a Sunday. And to add one more thing, the tracking tool is set up so that it's minimal, it's short, it's designed so that when you've got a source, the rough workflow is that when you've got a source, you have then you enter in their email address, you make a little entry for them, and it sends a survey out to them. Because the best way to get canonical information from someone is to let them self-identify. And so they fill out the information that gets entered into the system and such, and it's there. And then it's got a really great feature of like, if you 2 weeks from now, another reporter in your newsroom is going to talk to that same person, they can enter that information into the system. And then instead of it immediately sending them another survey, it notes that, hey, you've already talked to this person. This person's already in the system. So then it gets quantified as another, is talking to that person again, but it's not bothering the source. It's not providing, not bombarding them with information. And that can be really useful, like when you're quantifying, the public officials that you are talking to over and over again, or a community leader who is, it was a vibrant source and part of the news coverage. And so so it's that kind of information. So it's there and it's useful to you. We've got another question from Logan. Emma, do you want to take that, or should I?
I can take a stab at it. So I think it's all about the goals you set, Logan. So if your goal is to, reflect the demographic area that you live in, right? Madison, Wisconsin, I suspect is a little whiter maybe than another city might be. So that might not be the right measure for you, right? I get that. I hear that a lot from folks, is we do represent the demographics of our community, but we can still do better. So we put some, there's a goal setting worksheet in the toolkit somewhere that I can't find now. Well, maybe you can grab the link to it. I thought we put it in here. So I think it's all about how you set goals and say, what is the change we want to happen? So is it, we want 100% participation on staff. That's success for us. We want more non-traditional. Oh, this is very helpful. Thank you. So they couldn't see the questions in the chat because only we have access to the back end. So the question was, could you speak more about recommending tracking these different metrics, and how would you consider signs of success? We've made strides in our newsroom to include more diverse perspectives, but there's room to grow. And so I think goal setting, I think being really specific, right? Are there certain narratives and voices that are missing? So maybe you do source tracking for 6 months and you find that 75% of the Black sources that you spoke to were either victims of a crime or an athlete, right? What do you do with that information? That's a different goal than several of my colleagues think this is a dumb idea and won't engage with me. So, it sounds dumb to say, like, it will depend on your news organization, but I think set some goals, see if you can achieve them. And if you're not achieving them, go back and ask why. And if you are achieving them, then it's just time to set new goals that are more ambitious and more aggressive.
Absolutely. And other aspects of it are like, if you're, just think, making folks intentionally think about who they're asking, where, it's like, are you, in a quick breaking news situation, who do you call first? And thinking about, is it the person that you're calling them all the time because they'll answer the phone, or is it someone that you might have to take a couple more steps to get a better answer, to be a better source? And so it's really, getting at, these goals, but getting at the intentionality of who you're talking to, and making sure that in the newsroom you realize it's a choice. It's a choice of who you talk to and how you talk to them, and and if you're reporting with a community or reporting on a community. And and those, when you start changing that shifting that way that you think about it, it might be that the right choice is this person that you talk to regularly, but it might not. And so really forcing a newsroom to and reporters and editors to think about who you're talking to makes it a choice as opposed to a habit, and where it allows it to be a more equitable process. And so we have the checklist up there. It's at the end of challenge number 4. And it's in a Google Doc format. You can make a copy of it, and and that kind of gives you an idea of how in your newsroom it can be, because this is not a solution to all your DEI issues. This is literally one little aspect of making the process better. And but it's part of that ecosystem, part of the fabric of the way that we can work together to be better. Any other questions? And and Emma dropped the Smarty goals worksheet there. So yeah, that's super helpful. Any other questions? Concerns, things you wish that you could see? Okay. Well, we have all of this available online. We have the obviously, and we're happy to chat. And if you are interested in bringing your newsroom to using the source diversity tracking tool, we've got the signups for it. It's available. It's free. It's not something you have to pay for. And it's simple and straightforward. Literally, it's a 20-minute demo, and you can get going. It adds about a minute and a half to the time per source, so it's really time economical for the potential impacts that it can have. And since we have you here, for RJI, we've got a couple deadlines coming up, but the Women in Journalism Conference is still accepting folks. And we are just launching our new, in January, for the next cohort of RJI fellows, of which Emma is one of ours from last year. And so if you have any questions about that, you've got a captive RJI fellow who might be able to answer some questions.
Happy to answer questions. Here's a link to the fellowship application. Here's a link to Women in Journalism. The fellowship was great. I really enjoyed my fellowship. I thought it was nifty. I got to do cool stuff. My fellow fellows were incredible. You get money to explore your ideas, which is really cool. So I built a leadership program for journalists of color, working in local news, which you can read about here.
Yeah. And this program between Chalkbeat and RJI, grew out of one of our partnership programs, and that's one of the things I oversee. And so if you or new organization have an idea, something, whether it's a bit of tech or a process, a way of doing things better, I would love to hear about it. I'd love to chat and see if there's something we can build together. We're actively and always looking for new opportunities to partner with news organizations, individual journalists, and otherwise, to help take those ideas and make them actually into a practical solution. Like, the playbook is a good example of that, where it was like the idea of, we have this tool, but now we have to think about how we use it, how it works, and how it's going to be useful. And so these are the kind of things that we build, and want to build them together with you. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Norman. Thank you. And thanks everyone for joining us. If you don't have any questions, if we don't have any questions, I think we'll call it. And thanks so much for spending your time with us. And if you have questions, you can reach out to me at RJI if you want to set up a meeting. This is my Calendly, and you can just find a time and we can chat. So thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Emma, for spending your time today at the beginning of your new job with the Marshall Project, and for all your work on this. So thank you.
Great partnership.
Thank you all. We'll have a lovely day.
Bye.